Hi everyone, welcome to SmugMug Live. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is episode 105, streamed live on Thursday, September the 16th, 2001. Welcome back to the show, everybody. Thank you for joining me wherever you are in the world. My name's Alastair Jolly, your host for these shows, and as always, SmugMug Live is brought to you by SmugMug and Flickr. If you're looking for somewhere to showcase your images online, sell your images to your clients and customers around the world, or have incredibly robust storage for your photos, then check out everything we have to offer here at smugmug.com. Or if you're looking to be part of an incredible photo community, then please check out everything we offer at flickr.com. I can hear a few of you pinging away there in the chat window. So good to have you joining me. Give yourself a shout out in that chat window. If you see me peeking across here, I'm keeping an eye on all that chat. Let us know what part of the world you're joining us from. Hi, Christy, joining us from Chilliwack, British Columbia in Canada. Hi, James, joining us from Canyon Lake. And Patrick Barnett is joining us from England. Thank you all for being here so far and nice and early on this live stream. Tips and tricks episode today. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips to get you started and maybe inspire you to change some of your SmugMug site if you already have one. If you don't have one, then maybe you will be inspired to join up and check out what we do. UK Dano is joining us from Myrtle Beach, SC, South Carolina. I'm guessing Myrtle Beach, that's where they play all the fancy golf. Yeah. And Mauro is joining us, as always, from Ljubljana in Slovenia, beautiful part of the world. Welcome all. Before we get started, I want to bring up a little comment a few people have made to me online about my 2-minute countdown here on the live stream. Like all live streams, we start the show a couple of minutes early so that people on YouTube are notified that the show is starting, and there's a 2-minute countdown before it goes live, and hopefully gives you time to join the show live here with me. This show really for me is all about you joining me as a live audience and asking questions and interacting with me. But I appreciate many of you will be watching this as a recording later and not joining me live. And I've had a few people complain about the fact that the 2-minute countdown is at the beginning of the video. Trust me, you can fast forward and you can skip those 2 minutes right to the start of the show. But the reason I leave those 2 minutes there is, unfortunately on YouTube, if I delete those first 2 minutes of the countdown, then it deletes all the live chat. YouTube doesn't allow you to keep the live chat if you have edited the video in any way after the live stream. So I leave the 2 minute there just so that the interactions and the live chat lives on with the video so that people can go back and look at the chat that was happening during the show. So that's the reason why I leave the 2 minutes there. Hopefully it's not too much of a burden for you to skip forward 2 minutes. You don't have to sit through the 2 minutes if you're watching the recording. So that out the way, please interact with me in the chat window. If you have any questions for me today, post them in that chat window and hopefully we'll get to them. And feel free to talk amongst yourselves. I know in the weeks past, many of you have had some fun interactions there in the chat window. And hopefully we'll be on for about 30 minutes or so today. Connor McNeil is joining us, the fella joining us from Belfast. Hi Connor, one of our wonderful ambassadors at SmugMug. Incredible photographer. I highly encourage you to go check out Connor's work, and indeed check out the previous episode of one of the shows where we had Connor as a guest. I can't remember the number off the top of my head, sorry Connor, but yeah, we've had Connor on the show and had a great conversation with him. That being said, this is episode 105, so if you're joining me for the first time, you have a lot of catching up to do. And yeah, lots of great content that you can go back and be inspired by some great photographers or learn some tips and tricks. I also get some complaints that I talk too long at the beginning of these shows, but again, it is a live show where it's about engaging with the community, talking to you, catching up with you, seeing you in that chat window. So please drive this show for me by getting involved in that chat window, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Connor says, oh, shucks. Yeah, sorry, did I embarrass you, dude? Great photographer. Go check out his work, the fella. Right, let's head over to this site. You'll be well familiar with this site by now. My demo site where I play about and do lots of things to show you what you can do on SmugMug. Now, today I had hoped to show you something brand new, but unfortunately I'm going to have to tease you and hopefully show you that next week because we haven't quite launched what I was hoping to showcase today. So yeah, sorry about that. We'll do that next week. All things going well with the engineering, but a cool little new tweak. Kyle says, greetings from Nova Scotia, one of my favourite parts of the world. Uploading raw files to SmugMug Source as we view. Very good. SmugMug Source has been going really well. If you're not familiar with SmugMug Source, that is our new add-on subscription to allow you to store your raw files on SmugMug. When did I cover SmugMug Source? I'm looking at my little cheat sheet here. Episode 101, wasn't that long ago. It's a very new feature that we've just launched on SmugMug. For many, many years, people have been asking to store their raw files on SmugMug, and you can do that now with SmugMug Source. So go check out episode 101 if you want to learn a little bit more about Source and uploading your raw files. But Kyle, great to hear that you're doing that, and thank you for joining us on the show. Right, so back to this demo site. I wanted to touch on a couple of things, one of them being the ability to save changes for later. I've had a few comments and a few discussions with people over the last few weeks where people haven't realized that you can customize things but not make them live to the public view in your site. So here on this demo site, if I go to the little button up at the top here, the customize button just below the logo on screen, if I click on customize, of course I can change things on the site. Just give that a second to load. So here's we're working on my home page here, and I'll just make a quick change. Let's drag the logo up into the header. So rather than it being in the middle of my home page, it's now at the top of my home page. Very, very simple change. And maybe I'd also want to drag the menu item up underneath that logo. Let me see if I can zoom in here, because I just want to point out this little cross here, this little icon that looks like a cross, that's the move tool. So when you click on that little icon, you can drag a content block around the page. While I'm zoomed in, the next tab along is the dimensions icon. That allows you to adjust the size and dimensions of the content block. The options, the toolbar, the wrench, the spanner, whatever you want to call it, the option setting, that obviously then, when you click on that, as you've hopefully seen me do in many weeks, that allows you to change all the settings of the content block. And we have the delete, the trash can, the bin, whatever you want to call it, the remove block. So that would delete the block off the page. But for now, I'm going to drag on that little move tool, and I'm going to move my menu underneath my logo. So there you go. I've changed my home page. The logo and the navigation bar are no longer in the middle of the page. So I'm finished tweaking my page, but I'm not ready for it to go live. So when I hit done, I want to choose save for later. Okay, just want to spend some time just to clarify what this means. Publish now means that those changes would be published live on my page, and anybody who now comes to look at my website would see the changes. Discard changes at the bottom, that would remove any changes that I've made during this session, and my site would just be left exactly as it was, and when I come back to it, it would look exactly the same as before I'd done those changes. But I'm in the process of maybe revamping my website or making some changes or adding some new pages, all the type of things you want to do on, as your website lives from day to day, but you maybe haven't had the time to finish it, or you want to tweak it, or you want to work on it for a little bit longer. Then what you do is you hit save for later. And when I hit save for later, saves those changes in the customizer. But as you can see here on my actual homepage, the menu is still where it originally was, still in the middle. The menu items are still in the middle of my navigation bar, but nothing's changed. But we've remembered those tweaks. So I'm going to go back up to the top, back up to the Customize tab, unfortunately, right at the top there underneath the SmugMug Live logo. Click on Customize, and when I go back to the home page, what you'll see is those changes that I saved are still there. Now, I know I've just done a very simple change with the logo and the navigation bar, but within a session, anything that you change within a session, that's a session being when you've hit Customize to the point where you hit Done, that's a session. So anything you do within that session can be saved for later. So now if I went and made some more changes, let's move my social icon content block, which is down here in the footer. Let's drag that. I'm going to move that up just underneath that spacer block, which is a leftover from my design, but let's move that up underneath the navigation menu. So now I've made an additional change. I could go hit Done again, and of course now I could decide, yeah, that's me finished, I want to publish, or save this session again, and then it will add, you know, those changes to the first session changes that were saved. And when I click save, it will remember those, but my live site has not changed. It still looks exactly the same. And I could dive into different places within the website. So I could go to my portfolio, go up to Customize again up here, click Customize. I could go into this portfolio page on my site and change some things. Let's delete, remove that content block, which was the search feature content block that I'd added. I could make some changes to the settings of this gallery. Let's say I want the photographs to be a bit smaller. So I've reduced the size of each of those galleries within that page. Yep, so that's what I wanted to do on that page. Again, hit Done, finished on that page, but I'm not finished completely. So again, hit Save for Later. So every time you go into a page and you adjust something on this new design or this new project you're working on, just constantly hit Save for Later until such times as you're ready to make it live to your customers. So again, back here on the live site, you can see that search feature, that search content block is still there on the page. And it's not until I hit Customize and hit Done and then hit Publish Now. Once I hit Publish Now, that is now live on my site. So now I go to my site, you can see my search feature has gone. If I go to the home page, hopefully, yep, there you go, the logo's at the top. So those changes are now live. Doesn't look nearly as good as in the middle with the video playing. Just looking at the chat here. Hi, Nick. Good to see you. Nick is joining us from Kent in England. Nick, you're posting a couple of questions there, but your questions aren't coming through in full sentences in the chat. So, yeah, I can see you're actually deleting those. So I'll wait till you get your question properly typed. He's maybe struggling with autocorrect or something like that, Nick. But, there we go. He's finally got the question in. Thanks, Nick. Any version control or rollback? So, no, unfortunately, there's no history state kept within the changes you make, so you can't roll back over time. The save for later is only that session. So once you have made changes to that session, then you can no longer go back to the previous session. Unfortunately, it just is that single session state that you can save changes for. So there isn't any rollback, Nick, unfortunately. But interesting concept, and a concept we've heard before. So I'll be sure to take that feedback on board. One thing I would say about rolling back, while we're talking about trying to be non-destructive and trying not to delete things, I've mentioned this a few times on the tips and tricks episode. You can have several versions of your site that are non-destructive. If you go to the photo site and you click on the little drop-down menu, so there's 3 little dots up here right in the top corner, you can actually create a new site design. So I've mentioned this before. When you first sign up for SmugMug, you're asked to choose a SmugMug design. You choose one of these templates as the starting point for the things that you want to customize. So you choose one of these templates. And I know I'm repeating myself from previous weeks, but you can have as many sites designs as you want stored on SmugMug. So here you can see I have 8 different designs on this one demo page. AMG demo, which is the current one, which is the one we're using, and then an alternative one just to showcase that you can store those changes. So if I click on preview, it's going to show me that alternative design. So again, a completely different layout. So Nick, if you're wanting to really change something or change something quite significant, but you're frightened that you might want to revert back to that original design, then what I would say is start an actual brand new template so that your original design that you've worked on is permanently stored, and then the changes you're working on are this design, this second template, if you like, rather than the one that you're worried about changing and maybe having to roll back. So that is one way to do that, is have your original design and have alternates to that design that you're working on. And again, you can work on these in the background so that you're not changing the main design. That would be the way I would go about it. If I wanted to change significantly my site but not lose the design that I currently have and I currently like, I would just start a complete new template, a complete new design, and do it that way. Hopefully that answers your questions and gives you a little insight into how you can do that. Right, just checking the chat window here. No questions from you folks yet, so if you have a question, get those in now. Maybe got another 10-15 minutes here, and I'll stay if there's some questions to answer. Right, let's see. Let's go back to my site so that we are working on it. So I should have shown you this actually. When you choose a new site, you can actually publish it, or of course you can customize it. So you can work on it. Let me go here. Nick's just got a follow-up question here. Do the different templates use the existing pages and libraries? Unfortunately not. There's not a way to copy a design and then have that as a new design template. You'd have to choose the one that you originally chose and do a new customization to that new style that you wanted, keeping that old one there. But you can't copy one, unfortunately, and start afresh. Right, let's jump back over here. So the next thing I wanted to talk about today was the use of spacing within your site. Spacing is very, very important when it comes to the design layout, the comfort that people can read things, the visual quality of your site when people look at different things. And I wanted to point out a couple of ways that you can space content blocks so that they are positioned in the page the way you want them to. While we're doing that, I'm going to go change my design template back because I do prefer these things where they were. So let's put them in the footer. Let's see. Where's my footer? There it is. Sorry, I had to scroll up. So I'm going to put my social icons back in the footer. I'm going to move my menu down below that spacer bar. There we go. And I'm going to move the navigation underneath my logo. There we go. So back to where we started today. Gets rid of that ugly header background, and we should see the whole video playing now. There we go. So spacing content blocks, there's a couple of ways I want to do that. I mentioned earlier the dimensions tab. I'm going to go into a gallery. Let's see. I think it was actually it was my client galleries earlier today. Yeah, earlier today in my client galleries, I put in this piece of text in a text content block above the galleries here. Just a piece of lorem ipsum text. And if I hit customize, you'll be able to see on the page that I'm working on just this page, and here you can see we have a text content block. If I roll over the text content block here on the right, you can't see it because of my picture. I'll just hide my picture for a second. So here there's a text content block, which is this one just at the top with some lorem ipsum text in it. But you can see it fills the whole page. You know, it goes right to the edge of that whole content block. When you add a content block to your site, it's going to take up 100% of the width of the site. And we talk about content blocks being a percentage of the width of the page, so that with responsive technology, no matter what device someone is viewing your site on, it's always going to fill the entire width of the page. So if they're on a cell phone, a mobile phone, it will cover the whole width to 100%. If they're on an iPad or a tablet, it'll be 100%, or a big desktop monitor, it'll be 100%. So content blocks we talk about in percentage of width, so 100% of the page in this case. Now the downside is this block, initially when you drop it in here, fills 100% of the page, but it's not a very nice way to read text. It's far too big, especially on a big desktop screen. It takes up, you know, the whole page, and it's not a comfortable way to read this text. So there's a couple of ways that you can manage the layout of the text on this page. If I click on the little options icon, of course, when you are editing the text, you can control the justification of the text. So you can have it center justified, you can have it left, right, full width, whatever you want to do. And that can sometimes help. So if you had it centered, it would be a bit easier to read, but it's still going to go to, you know, in this case, edge to edge on the page. So what I'm actually going to do is use this dimensions tab to start with. So this little dimensions tab that I mentioned earlier does a few things. So let's click on it. One, it tells me how wide the container width is. So at the moment, I know the container width, that content block, is 100% wide, because there's no other content block to the left or the right of this content block. So of course it's taken up the whole page 100%. But I can also control the margins of the content inside the content block. So at the moment there's a 12 pixel margin all the way around this text, controlling where where it's positioned within the content block. So I could do something like add 200 pixels to the left margin, and let's add 200 pixels to the right margin, and suddenly I'm controlling the width of the text within the content blocks. I haven't changed the size of the content block. The content block is still full width of the page, but I've added padding to either side of it. Padding would be the kind of design term of adding some space around what's inside the content block. I could maybe do it a little bit more. I could maybe go 250 pixels on either side, and just bring that text into a kind of a paragraph size that's comfortable to read for people. So that's one way to add space around a content block. And of course, I could add space to the top of the block. So if I wanted more space between the text and the content block above it, I could add some space at the top. And of course I could add some space at the bottom. Now, it takes a bit of trial and error to know exactly how much you want. So 100 is obviously far too much, but 25 pixels might just be enough to give a little bit of space at the bottom and the top, so that, content within different content blocks is not slammed right up against each other. If I had no space no padding in the menu at the top, you can see that the the navigation buttons are just slightly up from the bottom of that content block. But if I had no spacing there, then they were right at the bottom of that content block. And then this text was right at the top of that content blocks, they'd be slamming right into each other. So adding padding is just a really nice way to space the content within the block and, you know, position it in a way that you would like it to look. And as if I drag the bottom corner here of the page, let's see if I can do that, you'll see that as I reduce the size of that page, that spacing stays there until we get to a mobile phone size. And once we get to that kind of mobile phone size, then we center everything in the page. So that's one way to look at spacing, and it's also worthwhile looking at spacing, and when you're designing your sites, worthwhile looking at it on different devices. So that's one way. There's one other way to add spacing. So let me remove the padding that I've added in the margins within the dimension tab. The other way to do it is to add a spacer content block. So if I open up the customizer again, I'm still in the customizer here. I go down, let me just hide my picture so you can see. If I go down here to design, if I expand the design content blocks, you'll see one of those blocks is called a spacer. So I'm going to add a spacer to the left-hand side of this text. Now, I want you to notice something here. I've added two content blocks left and right of each other. We will automatically, as you can see here, once that content block's dropped on the page, we'll automatically give 50% to each content block. So you can see here that those two content blocks are split right down the middle. So 50% of this block, 50% of the page goes to this block, 50% of the page goes to that block. That's all changeable, and I'll do that in a minute. The reason I'm not going to do it just now is because I'm going to add another spacer, this time to the right of the text. And when I let go of that, lo and behold, what we've done is we've added three content blocks. So each of them, the container width is 33.3% width. Let's go into the dimensions tab here of the left spacer. And then you can go, there you can see 33.3%. So it's a third of the page is given to each of the blocks because I've dropped three in a row here on the page. I'm just going to go in here and change that container width to 15, maybe 20%. So now we have left one is 20%. Let's balance it up by making the right spacer block 20% too. And if my maths is correct, then this block is now 60%. 60 plus 40 is 100% wide. But what we've done now is we have three content blocks in a line, two spacers, and the content blocks I want in the middle. So that is one way, or the second way, sorry, to control where content appears on the page. And margins can be used on all the content blocks. So even on this content blocks, which is a gallery content block with three different galleries in it, I can still add some spacing so that you either have the image full width or you can add a bit of spacing to the left and to the right. So you can see I've added a little bit of a margin there to the right of that image, but I'll put it back to 12. I like it kind of full width the way it is. So yeah, any content block you can control the dimensions of by adding margins, by changing the content width, but also positioning stuff on the page. You can add these spacers, which is a nice way to be comfortable that everything's exactly the way you want it. I personally like using spacer blocks more than margins, just so that I can control exactly what's happening left and right. But you know, two different ways you can do that. So I'm just going to hit done, hit publish now, and you will see, there we go, we've got a piece of text somewhat in the middle of the page, which is a lot more readable than when it was full width when I'd first added it to the page. Okay, if there's any questions about that, feel free to ask. Question here from Patrick Patrick Barnett Photography Limited. Thanks, Patrick. Can I have 2 or more SmugMug websites live at the same time? You can if you pay 2 subscriptions. Under your own SmugMug account, then it is just one live website. So you can only have one domain name per SmugMug account. With our Power portfolio and Pro packages, you can have your own custom domain name. But one custom domain name or one URL for one SmugMug site, you can only have one live or one design live at a time, obviously, because that URL is only going to point at one thing. If you wanted to have 2 different site designs, then I'm afraid you would have to have a second SmugMug subscription. I wonder if you maybe want to write in the chat and explain why you maybe want to. I know a lot of us as photographers don't just photograph one genre of photography. You know, maybe we do wedding photography as our main business, but we also do motorsport or photograph cars or bikes or whatever the other thing is that you do. And you want 2 very different looks for both of those clients. But unfortunately, you can only have one URL pointing to one homepage on SmugMug. So one way to do that would be on the homepage to ask the visitor what type of client they are. Are you a wedding client? Are you a motorsport client? And then they go to separate, different pages after they click that choice. But and every page can be customized, can have a different theme, can have a different look. So you could have a different look for all your alternative pages, but they would still live under the one domain name, unfortunately. So hopefully that answers your question. Right, I'm just hoping that you'll ask some more questions to hopefully give me a chance to answer some of your questions that you might have. Let me tell you, obviously we're trying to get back into the swing of doing these a little bit more regularly. We took a bit of a break over summer, and then there's been lots happening behind the scenes at SmugMug and Flickr, so it's been pretty busy, pretty difficult to try and get back on here to do these regularly. But I'm getting back into the swing of it. Hopefully Tuesdays will be back to tips and tricks on a Tuesday, and then have some guests join me maybe every other Thursday. We were doing these live shows every Tuesday and Thursday throughout the last year and a half. Obviously with the pandemic, we were not traveling. Things are beginning to get busier, and lots more projects on the go. So I'm not sure I can commit to doing 2 episodes a week, but I certainly will be here on a regular basis throughout the coming months as we head into winter, which is just around the corner. But hopefully we all have a beautiful autumn before then. Right, I don't see any more questions coming in, so we will call today's episode done. Thank you as always for joining me. You could do me a huge favour and hit that subscribe button, hit that little bell notification. Subscribing, hitting the bell notification, give me a thumbs up if you've liked this video. That all helps not only support me and the show, but it helps other people discover the show by YouTube being more likely to recommend this show to those other people. So do that for me. Give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. Hitting the notification, you'll be notified whenever a new show goes live during the 2-minute countdown, or after the show. You'll see a little notification in your window, in your notifications on YouTube. Thank you for the thumbs up, folks. Appreciate it. That there's a new episode. So stay tuned. Some cool new things coming down the line. So hopefully I get to talk about them on next week's show. But for now, wherever you are in the world, stay safe, be kind, look after each other, and we'll see you back here on Tuesday for another SmugMug Live episode. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye for now. Bye.